A man who just betrayed his entire empire to survive is seconds away from realizing it wasn't enough. Roman Dmitri has no interest in mercy, and the Emperor of Valhalla has no interest in retreat. Two chess masters, one board, and someone is about to flip the table. The chapter opens not with a corpse, but with something far more useful, a broken man. Count Santino is alive. Roman Dmitri spared him deliberately, severing the communication crystal before the Marquis of Belfier could order the Count's execution through the link. With that line cut, Santino is confronted with a brutal truth. His own empire had already written him off as a disposable piece. That realization does more damage than any blade could. Stripped of dignity and loyalty in the same moment, Santino collapses into desperation. He begs, he offers everything, his title, his honor, whatever remains, just to stay alive. Roman doesn't answer with words. He throws the man to the stone floor and stands over him with a single cold demand. Give me something worth keeping you alive for. Santino's mind races. He lands on the one card he has left. He reveals classified military intelligence on the Javier Warp Gate, the heavily defended strategic point that Roman's entire campaign is built around capturing. He explains the hidden weaknesses in its magical defenses, troop rotations, and blind spots. He makes the case that without this inside knowledge, taking Javier would be nearly impossible. He finishes, looks up, and with a shaking voice asks if that's finally enough to earn his life. Roman's response is a smile, not a reassuring one. He tells Santino plainly, the information isn't enough. Before the Count can even curse him, Roman strikes. One clean, decisive blow ends Count Santino's story on the battlements of his own fortress. Far from the battlefield in Marin, the capital of Valhalla, something rare is happening. The people have had enough. The desperate resistance of Duke Vieto's rebel army inside Hernard has sent a shockwave through the civilian population. Watching ordinary soldiers fight to the death for a cause larger than themselves lights something in the citizens that propaganda and fear had long suppressed. A massive crowd fills the grand square and begins marching towards the Imperial palace. One civilian steps to the front and speaks for all of them. His words are measured but fierce. He reminds the Emperor that Valhalla was built on a warrior's code, on honor, strength, and pride. What sits on the throne now, he argues, is none of that. It is a regime sustained by shadows, manipulation, and the quiet disposal of anyone who asks too many questions. He pleads for a return to what Valhalla actually stands for. His voice carries across the square. For a moment it feels like something might shift. Then the palace doors open. The crowd holds its breath. The civilian leader turns back to the people with a flicker of hope in his eyes, believing the Emperor has heard them. He hasn't. The doors open not to dialogue, but to armoured soldiers moving in perfect formation. Before the civilian leader can finish his sentence, the lead knight steps forward and cuts him down without a word of warning. The knight then turns to the crowd and declares the protesters to be traitors, and orders his men to deal with them accordingly. The square turns to chaos. Screams replace chants. The Imperial soldiers move through the defenceless crowd without hesitation. Dying on the cold stone steps, the civilian leader uses his last breath to name what he sees clearly. The Emperor of Valhalla has lost his mind to power. He warns that what happens here will not stay hidden. The rest of Valhalla will see this. The knight ends it with a single stroke. Then he justifies it simply. These were the Emperor's orders. Inside the pristine halls of the Imperial Palace, the contrast is jarring. While blood dries on the Grand Square's stones, Marquis Belfier delivers a tidy, emotionless report. The uprising has been suppressed, and any remaining connections to the rebellion will be tracked down. The Emperor listens from his throne, unbothered. He dismisses the slaughtered citizens as people who forgot their station. When the conversation turns to Roman Dmitri and Duke Vieto's strategy of using public sentiment as a weapon against the crown, the Emperor laughs at it. Not a performance, genuine contempt. He walks down the steps of the throne and reflects quietly. His own brothers once bet everything on the same card. Popular support, moral high ground, the will of the people. It didn't save them. They died for it. Tonight was simply history repeating itself. Then, almost as an afterthought, he gives Marquis Belfier a new instruction: contact Roman Dmitri. A magical projection flickers to life in the hall. Roman Dmitri's face appears, composed, unbothered, with a faint edge of dark humour. He greets the Emperor, noting the timing is convenient. The Emperor narrows his eyes. The projection expands. Behind Roman, the scale of the carnage becomes visible. Valhallan soldiers cover the ground as far as the image can show. Roman smiles at the Emperor across the magical link, letting the sight speak for itself. Marquis Belfier visibly recoils. He stares at the scope of the destruction and quietly marks Roman as something beyond rational calculation. The Emperor, however, laughs. He claps. He openly praises what Roman has done to his own forces, calling it genuinely impressive. He acknowledges that in all the opposition he has ever faced, Roman is the only one who has delivered real, measurable results. He even suggests, half serious, that Roman might have been a natural fit for Valhalla. Then he shifts. The praise becomes a trap. He lays out Roman's entire strategic framework. Take Luenos, Port Bell and Santino in rapid succession, force Valhalla to pull its troops back to defend the Javier Warp Gate, and use that pressure to squeeze the Imperial family. Clean, logical, effective, and completely irrelevant, because the Javier Warp Gate no longer exists. The Emperor destroyed it himself. By eliminating their own strategic asset, the Empire has neutralized Roman's entire endgame. Even if Roman takes Javier now, he can't use it. His forces are effectively cut off. The Emperor leans into the projection, eyes lit with something unhinged, and asks what Roman plans to do now that every option has been closed. He closes with a promise. When Roman finally falls, the Emperor intends to be there in person to see it. The transmission ends. The chapter closes at Hernard, where the siege has ground into its 10th brutal day. Count Gomez drives the Imperial forces forward through pouring rain, declaring that today the rebel army ends. Soldiers swarm the fortress walls on siege ladders, and the vanguard begins to pour over the top. Duke Vieto meets them personally. He fights with everything he has, cutting down the first knight before the man can even raise his sword, sweeping through the Imperial advance with the kind of force that comes from someone who has nothing left to protect but the ground beneath his feet. But he knows. The reserves are gone. The losses over 10 days have been too deep. He acknowledges to himself that holding out this long was already a miracle no one planned for. Surrounded, outnumbered, and fully aware that the math no longer works in his favour, Duke Vieto makes his choice. He does not order a retreat. He does not seek an exit. He faces the incoming wave of Imperial soldiers and makes a vow. If this is where he dies, then this is where he dies. He will not turn his back. 2 days into the siege of Hernard, the walls are barely holding. Count Gomez oversees the assault from a safe distance, calm and precise. His Imperial forces have been grinding the rebel defences down with ruthless efficiency. From his perspective, this is not a war. It is a controlled demolition. The rebels inside, led by Duke Vieto, have traded a life of comfort for a fight they cannot win, and Gomez sees no reason to rush what is already decided. Then his communication stone lights up, and everything changes. An urgent transmission comes through, carrying an order Gomez cannot make sense of. Withdraw part of his forces from the siege. Immediately. He pushes back hard, arguing that pulling troops now would be handing the barely alive rebels a miracle they have done nothing to earn. But the voice on the other end isn't asking. It belongs to the Emperor himself. The message is simple: obey or face the gallows. Gomes screams into the void as the transmission cuts off, demanding to know what could possibly justify abandoning a victory already in hand. The story rewinds to explain why the Empire is suddenly in a panic. In the grand central plaza of Marin, Marquis Belfier stands over a kneeling prisoner. The square is packed with citizens, surrounded by armoured Imperial knights. Belfier is making an example. A public execution meant to crush any remaining spirit of dissent. He delivers his judgment coldly, reminding the crowd that treason carries only one outcome. The blade falls. Blood stains the stone. He orders the next prisoner brought forward, but before the knight can comply, an emergency transmission intercepts him. His face goes pale as he relays the report to Belfier. Coordinated attacks have erupted across Valhalla simultaneously. Roman Dmitri has been moving in the shadows, and the empire is under assault from within. The scene shifts east to the city of Cairo. A team of cloaked operatives moves across rooftops in silence. Their target is the Cairo Armory, a fortified imperial building guarded by fully armored knights who have no idea they are already dead. The strike is swift and without sound. The guards are neutralized before they can raise an alarm. A magical explosive device is attached to the iron doors, armed with a single click, and the operatives dissolve into the shadows. The explosion tears apart the night sky. Flames pour out of the armory, lighting the street below in orange and red. Citizens pour out of their homes in confusion and fear. And then, 3 cloaked figures step into view. They do not hide. They speak directly to the crowd, reminding them of the innocent people slaughtered in Marin simply for speaking uncomfortable truths, warning that none of them are safe under the current emperor, urging them to stop waiting for rescue and take their homeland back themselves. The fear on the faces in the crowd slowly hardens into something else. Imperial reinforcements arrive, and the Knight Commander orders his men to pursue the operatives at all costs. The lead operative glances back, unbothered. Then, in a single explosive burst, the agents vanish into the alleyways using high-level movement techniques, leaving the knights standing in an empty street, baffled. These are not ordinary rebels. They are elite agents of the House Sect, masters of martial arts who have been operating in Valhalla's blind spots. Far from the chaos, Roman Dmitri sits motionless on a throne in the quiet city of Javier. His aide, Chris, stands at his side. A holographic battle report comes in. The psychological operation is working. Rebellions have broken out across eastern Valhalla. The northern granaries are on fire. The Empire is losing control of its own population. Chris notes that the Emperor has permanently lost the trust of his people, but then raises a tactical concern. If Valhalla can prove that Romans secretly orchestrated these uprisings, they could flip the narrative and use it to unify the public against him. Roman dismisses it without blinking. His calculation is different. The citizens are past the point of caring who lit the fire. They are already burning. What matters now is how the Emperor responds to the pressure, and Roman already knows how a cornered, unstable ruler responds. Chris hesitates, expressing unease about the civilian cost of this strategy. Roman cuts it off cleanly. Valhalla is not his nation. Dmitri's future is the only priority. He instructs Chris to activate the secondary plan they had prepared in advance. A cold smile crosses his face. The Emperor once wanted to know what Roman Dmitri was truly capable of. Now he is finding out. Inside Valhalla's imperial court, the reports arrive in waves. Armories destroyed, granaries burning, rebellions spreading. Commanders argue that they have no choice but to pull forces from the front just to stabilize the interior. One official stops and does the math, and the result is paralysis. If the army retreats, the Empire loses its grip on both the north and Hernard. If it doesn't, the interior collapses. Before anyone can decide, a knight bursts into the hall. Roman Dmitri is requesting a direct communication. Marquis Belfier steps forward to take the call, with the Emperor watching silently in the background. Belfier challenges Roman directly, warning that his actions are pushing the Empire toward total war and that the rebels in Hernard are already on the edge of collapse. Roman is unmoved. He confirms the two nations are now permanently on opposite sides of a line that cannot be uncrossed. Belfier presses harder. The rebels will be finished before sunset, and Roman's entire strategy has already failed. Then Roman delivers the final blow. He states calmly that he always knew 200,000 rebels could never topple the Valhalla Empire. Belfier goes quiet. Roman continues. Because the task was impossible from the start, he had already decided to abandon the rebels entirely. They were never the point. They were the board he needed to play on. The chapter closes with something far larger than a tactical reveal. Roman's shadow stretches across the landscape, not like a man, but like something ancient and uncontainable. His eyes glow with a pale violet light. His white hair moves in a wind that seems to exist only around him. He sheds every title, every constraint, and announces something that the world of this story has not yet been forced to fully reckon with. He is not simply Roman Dmitri, he is the ruler who once consumed the entire Central Plains with nothing but raw, unmatched force. He is the heavenly demon, and he has only just gotten started. That's chapter 200. If you want to see how Valhalla respond, and whether the Emperor truly grasps what he has invited into his domain, make sure you're subscribed. The next chapter doesn't slow down.